Hi guys, and welcome to yet another video on my channel. So today I wanted to talk about a book that I just finished recently. It was awesome because I read this with my best friend Fenella, who you've seen at places in this channel, and we read it together. We were house sitting for about a month, but we read this book in about a week. So what we did was we would sit at night and I would read it out loud and she would listen, and we'd probably read like a chapter each night. And I haven't read like this in a really long time, like since I don't even know, like primary school or something, when you sit in class and the teacher like reads a book to you, or you listen to a book, or even how I've been listening to a bunch of like audio books, like how I've been re-listening to all of the Harry Potter books. It was kind of like that, but it's interesting being the person reading it and reading it with a friend of yours. It's been really cool. So I really enjoyed the experience. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children follows the main character Jacob, kind of in the aftermath of his grandfather passing away in the forest near his house. Now there's a little bit of confusion and drama because his grandfather seems like he was a bit of an interesting character. He had all these old photographs which you get to see, and they're kind of interwoven into the story of this home that he grew up in Wales on an island with all these different children and this lady who ran it called Miss Peregrine. And so basically, to try and understand what happened to his grandfather and the kind of person that he was, Jacob ends up going to this island and trying to find the home for children. So he gets there and it's just this amazingly beautifully written story. I heard like a bunch of mixed reviews about this book because a lot of people really loved it and a lot of people weren't as into it. So I wasn't sure what to really expect. I didn't want to know too much about about the story before I read it, so I kind of tried not to read too much or look at too many YouTube reviews or anything like that. I just wanted to have my own opinion, but I wasn't prepared for, like I said, how beautifully written it was, how everything was described. It was just wonderful to read. Like it was quite amazing to read. The way the landscape is described and the way the people and everything is described is just really quite wonderful and quite like majestical and just amazing, and I just had such a good time reading it, especially when you read with a friend, because you can share the experience together and talk about it together. A lot of the stuff that happens in the beginning of the book is almost like a foreshadowing for stuff that happens later in the book. So if you are going to read this book, I would definitely recommend to pay attention to things that happen in the beginning, especially things that the grandfather says to Jacob, because everything is important. And it's almost like this book is like a mystery because it's slowly being unraveled and revealed, but always linking back to things that he said before and all these things, and it's just so good. So I gave this book a 5 out of 5 star Goodreads rating. You can see my rating on Goodreads if you want to follow me. All of my stuff is down below. But I just really loved it. I really liked Jacob as a character. I loved how realistic it was, you know, in a bunch of ways. How, not so much the story and exactly what happened, but how he would leave his father to figure out, you know, to go exploring and figure things out, but had to try and explain where he was every time, because basically what happened was he went through this hole in the ground through a tunnel and appeared in a different time. So it's called Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children because the children in the home are peculiar. What that basically means, I feel like a lot of people compare this to like X-Men, or like the old X-Men where they're like in, you know, Professor Xavier's, you know, school for gifted children or whatever it is. And I love X-Men, like I love it, like Wolverine is bae. But I have to say that I couldn't really see the comparison in a lot of, like, really subtly, but not in a big way. Like I think it's definitely set apart and very different to that. the children, it feels a lot different because it's set in a different time. So there's Jacob's time, and then when he goes through the tunnel, he's in 1940, and because they're in a different time, it feels like we are as well. So it does feel quite different. Also, I found their powers were quite unique to anything I've really seen before. Like, I've seen people with superpowers, and it's almost like people with superpowers know how to use their powers and already have it all together. But these guys were children, and their powers were quite different. There's a kid who has bees living inside of him. Amazing. There's a girl who has to wear like weighted shoes to keep her attached to the ground, because or else she will just literally float away. And all of the children have power. A few more regular powers. There's a girl who can manipulate plants and make them grow super excitingly. The love interest of Jacob, Emma, she can like make fire in her hands, and she's quite cool. But there's this one kid who is the creepiest creep of them all. And I loved him. This kid was definitely my favourite character. I can't remember his name. Was it Enoch? I'm not sure. But he could give things life. So Jacob finds him in the garden, and he's got these little like clay characters, and they're walking around, and he's like controlling them and killing them and stuff like that, but they're actually like alive, and he can give things life. And the bit that got me so bad is when they go to try and, because somebody gets killed on the island, and they're trying to figure out if it's you know, what it is exactly, and they go and they find this guy who's been killed and like severed open, and he's dead, and they take all of these, he's been pickling cow hearts and sheep hearts downstairs in the house for who knows how long, and he's like, alright, you need to all take one of these and put one in each of your pockets, because we're going to try and bring this guy back to life and ask him what happened to him. And they're like, okay. So they take all these pickled hearts and put them in their pockets, and he like grabs a heart in one hand and puts his hand into the chest of the dead man, and like does some sort of like weird thing to try and bring him life. He's like, this heart doesn't work, give me another one. He goes through a bunch of hearts, and then he gets to one, he's like, and then he just like looks at the man, he's like, live. And the guy like opens his eyes and tells him what's happened, and it's just like, this kid is my favourite character. He is like ultimate, like he's so, his power I feel like is the most creepy and the most interesting, and I feel like as the book series progresses, he's gonna be like so important. He's gonna be so important. I feel like something's gonna happen in one of the other books, and he's gonna do something really cool. I really hope that happens. And then they had the kid. I have a question about, I think it was Victor, the kid who was asleep, but was really dead, who they left lying in the room, who was Bronwyn's brother or something, Bronwyn the Strong Girl's brother. I have a question, okay, because they were keeping him in there, just keeping him there, and me and my friend were talking about this, you know, why hadn't they got Enoch, or whatever his name was, the kid who brought the people back to life, to go in there and bring him back to life? I feel like, why weren't they doing that? I feel like there was like, why did they tell us about him if he wasn't important when everything else in the book was important? I just don't understand. I really need that. I really need closure on that. Thank you. Thank you, Ransom Riggs. But I feel like the story was so intricately woven together. We gasped so much in the last part of the book when everything was getting revealed, and as soon as the guy who was the white started revealing, he's like, do you remember when I was, you know, like he'd been all these different people in his life, he'd been pretending to be all these different people, and he's like, do you remember who your gardener was? It was me. Do you remember who your dentist was? It was me. Do you remember that person who stared at you in the bookshop? It was me. And then finally, and we're like, oh, he's the therapist. And he's like, I was your therapist. And we were like, oh, it was so well done and it was so amazing. A little, you kind of could see it coming as it built and things like that, but it was still a shock because you were like, no, maybe not, but it was, and it was just, it was so good. So we've started reading the second book, and I have to say that it is pretty good. It's not quite as gripping as the first one so far, but we're still very early on, so we're just giving it a bit of time, but it's still very, very good. The writing is beautiful. I loved Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I'm so glad that I read it before it comes out in the theatres. I'm so excited to see how Tim Burton takes it and turns it into a movie. I'm just so excited. And like I said, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It is definitely a contender for one of my favourite books this year. I can't wait to make a video at the end of this year and pick out what books were my favourite, because I feel like there's so many that I've just really loved this year and it's been amazing. I hope you guys are having an awesome day. If you want to follow me on any of my other platforms, they'll be down below, and I will see you guys in my next video.
Side of one of the most stressful and difficult